My name is Steve Moran, and I run a blog called Senior Living Foresight on the senior living industry. And today I am at Park Manor, Abes Garden, and I'm talking to Lynette. Tell me your last name.
Broders.
Broders, and you have a loved one in Abes Garden.
I do. My dear mother, Betty Broders, has been there since May of 2018.
And how did you decide to use Abes Garden?
Google, like I do everything else in my life. When my dad passed away, I knew that we were going to at some point need to put my mom into a care facility, and that I would care for her as long as I could in her home. But I knew that I was going to run out of energy and time and bandwidth to just handle it as the disease progressed. So what I did was what I always do. I Googled best Alzheimer's care facilities in the country. And it sent me to the Alzheimer's Association message boards, where you keep filtering down into more and more detail. And finally I read someone's answer to that question was, any facility that is using the Hearthstone Project and Abes Garden is where you want to head. And that's where I started my research.
Okay, and you ultimately ended up at Abes Garden, right?
Totally ended up at Abes Garden.
But here's and this is going to get me to the reason why I was so excited about talking to you today. And that's, where were you? So in Abes Garden, I want to make sure everybody knows, when you see this, you'll know this, but we're in Nashville, Tennessee, right? And where were you when you did this Google search?
I was in rural eastern Iowa.
So you picked up and moved from rural eastern Iowa to Nashville so your mom could be here.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because I promised my dad that I would take the very best care I could of the girl he married. And fortunately, I had about 4 months with my dad after my mom's diagnosis to talk to him about the very difficult things that no German 90-year-old farmer wants to talk about. But basically he just said, take care of her the way I would take care of her. Well, that I could do. I had watched this man take care of this woman and give her anything she wanted, anything she needed for 63 years. I knew how to take care of my mom the way my dad wanted her to be taken care of.
So you packed up and moved here with her?
Absolutely.
And so you're living here now?
Absolutely.
In Nashville?
Absolutely.
And you reoriented your whole life. And so here's the question. Was it worth it? Absolutely,
unquestionably. I would not have the life that I now have in Nashville if it had not been for Abes Garden. And that's because what I saw when I had my mom in her home is that if you follow all the protocols that you can quickly learn that they tell you to do for an Alzheimer's patient, socialization, music, more socialization, exercise, diet, more socialization, church, people. If you follow all of those things, guess what? My mom had a pretty good life with me with Alzheimer's in Iowa in her home, as long as I was with her 24 hours a day, feeding all of that schedule and that itinerary. I knew I couldn't do it forever. But I also, therefore, had learned what my mom needed, and that's what my mom needed. My mom needed to be in a place where she was going to be spoken to regularly, where people were not just going to know her name, but they were going to know what her triggers were, what she didn't like, what she'd love to do. And she really needed to be around other people, because when my mom is around other people, then she doesn't think anything's wrong with her. That feels normal to a woman who was very social in her previous Alzheimer's life. It's when you try to isolate her into a room or in front of a TV that my mom would become agitated, because she would then know something was wrong with her. When she's here, she feels like she's social, she's engaged, there's other people like her, they're doing flowers, they're doing drawings. They put her in the kitchen, and she knows then that she's okay because she's in a kitchen where she spent most of her adult life. So Abes gave me that, and if it hadn't been for that, I would never have been comfortable leaving my mom for any amount of time.
That is such a cool story. I always worry that when somebody makes that big a transition, that they'll come back and say, "Oh man, I wish I hadn't done that." But clearly, it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
The only way I could be now living my own life, while I know that I am taking care of my mom simultaneously at a level that is, my standards are high, so are Abes Garden. And I could never travel the way I've now been able to travel and do some things and focus on myself at all if I wasn't 100% sure that she is getting exactly what I signed her up for.
What a great story. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Normally I go a lot longer when I'm doing interviews, but honestly, people won't watch anything more than that. So that's a great story. That is a great story. I really, really appreciate
I don't need
that
to talk anymore.
Yeah. So, well, normally I interview industry people, and they get really upset. You know, if you only interview them 6 minutes, they don't like that very much.
I
But
don't care.
that is
6 minutes
absolutely
means
great.
I got time to get down to my mom.
That's right. Yeah, that's good.
Are we good?
Good. So, are you happy with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
I think so.
I mean, I like it. I thought it was really powerful.
Anything else you want me to say that I didn't say?
I mean, I feel like you covered socialization, obviously, you know, the engagement piece. I don't think.
The only other thing that I always like to make sure people know about Abes is that they got to know my mom. I got my mom in here early enough that they got to know her and know what is good for her and what doesn't work for her. And the reason that's so important is because then they know her triggers. And what I love about Abes is that they don't just know my mom's triggers. Every single person on staff knows everybody's triggers. So when my mom starts to get upset, everybody knows, give her milk and cookies at the kitchen table, she's good. But they don't just know that about my mom. They also know that after every meal, Miss Barbara needs to have her check paid. Everybody in town knows it, and everybody knows, Barbara, Miss Barbara, it's okay, Kim took care of it. Did Kim pay? Yeah, Kim paid, you're good. Okay, good, then she can move on. And I don't think people necessarily appreciate that when you have a staff that knows people that well to do that immediately, the anxiety, the agitation, the confusion never ramps. It doesn't ramp.
Yeah.
And people, this may not be the place to know that, but somebody needs to get the word out that facilities who can identify when someone is being triggered and what they are doing and get to it immediately are better facilities, they're calmer facilities, and residents are chiller. And downstairs, they get it done. So that's the only other thing I always want to tell people is that they get it done downstairs. I've seen it, not just with my mom. So anyway.
That's perfect. We'll just cut that out, and you can use that as a separate clip because that's also very powerful. So it's still running. So it's just, I just.
Oh, I didn't know.
So I just I have to get up and shut it off, and so it just.
Oh well.
And since I run a one-person show, right? I just get this one long piece of video that I go in and chop up. So that's really, really terrific.
No, it's important when people go to choose a place. It's important that they know that getting in there early enough so that the staff can get to know your loved one while they can still walk and talk and speak and eat and all those things. It matters. I know people don't always want to spend the money, and I get that. But I'm telling you what, you're going to end up paying X amount of money anyway that you cannot tell if it's going to last for 1 year, 1 month, or 10.
Yeah.
So,
well, and one of the things that's so fascinating to me is, and why I like Abes Garden so much, is that there's a lot of focus. Alzheimer's Association, their focus is almost exclusively on trying to find a cure. And there's nothing wrong. I mean, it would be wonderful if we found a cure, but right now we've got millions or hundreds of thousands of people living with Alzheimer's today. And we actually, in my view, we need more Abes Garden and more people who are focusing on how do you create great lives for people who already have it, who a cure will never help, which is what Abes Garden does, which is just fantastic.
Well, my son works in biotech, and his company works on Alzheimer's drugs.
Oh, really?
Oh, God, yes, in honor of his grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm always up to speed on exactly what's going on. And as he tells me, the basic science of exactly what is causing this is not known yet.
No, it's not.
They can tell you whatever they want to tell you about blood tests and PET scans and all of that, but what he tells me from his team, because he's industry-wide, he knows everybody, they don't have the basic science of this disease down yet. Until they get the basic science down, the cure might be hit or might mitigate or something. We haven't had a new Alzheimer's drug in 20 years.
Yeah, and the drugs that are out there aren't any good.
And they got 300 clinical trials going on right now.
No, it's really fascinating. And, they do all they dissect all these brains, right? And they see all this damage in there. But what they can't figure out is they'll take two brains with exactly the same pathological damage, biological damage, and in one case the symptoms will be significant, and in others they'll be absent. So they just don't know.
They don't have the science yet.
That's right.
So that's why, from his perspective, he's like, Mom, I'm just going to keep checking you.
Yep.